वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 9. Bhishma is passing away in the presence of Lord Krishna. Text number 26. Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Ashramam Yatha Varnam Yatha Ashramam Vairagya Raga Upadibhyam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Amnata Ubhaya Lakshanan Amnata Ubhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Amnato Bhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Amnato Bhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Amnato Bhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Raga Upadibhyam Amnato Bhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Vairagya Upadibhyam Amnato Bhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagyo Adopatibhyam Amnato Bhaya Lakshanan Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Purusha Swabhava Vihitan Yatha Varnam Yatha Shramam Vairagya Ragopadibhyam Purusha, the human being. Swabhava, by his own acquired qualities. Vihitan, prescribed. Yatha, as it is. Varnam, classification of castes. Yatha, as it is. Ashramam, orders of life. Vairagya, detachment. Raga, attachment. Upadibhyam, out of such designations. Amnata, systematically. Ubhaya, both. Lakshanan, symptoms. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. At Maharaja Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishma Deva first of all defined all the classifications of caste and orders of life in terms of individuals' qualifications. Then he systematically in twofold divisions described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. Translation with repetition. At Maharaja Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishma Deva first of all defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The conception of four castes and four orders of life, as planned by the Lord Himself, Bhagavad Gita 4.13, is to accelerate transcendental qualities of the individual person so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identification and thus act accordingly to get free from material bondage or conditional life. In almost all the Puranas, the subject matter is described in the same spirit, and so also in the Mahabharata, it is more elaborately described by Bhishma Deva in the Shanti Parva, beginning from the 60th chapter. The Varnashrama Dharma is prescribed for the civilized human being just to train him to successfully terminate human life. Self-realization is distinguished from the life of the lower animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing and mating. Bhishma Deva advised for all human beings 9 qualifications: not to become angry, not to lie, to equally distribute wealth, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body, not to be inimical toward anyone, to be simple, to support servants or subordinates. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above mentioned preliminary qualities. Besides these, the Brahmanas or the intelligent men, the administrative men, the mercantile community and the liberal class must acquire special qualities in terms of occupational duties mentioned in all the Vedic scriptures. For the intelligent men, controlling the senses is the most essential qualification, which is the basis of morality. Sex indulgence, even with a legitimate wife, must also be controlled, and thereby family control will automatically follow. An intelligent man abuses his great qualifications if he does not follow the Vedic way of life. This means he must seriously make a study of the Vedic literatures, especially of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. For learning Vedic knowledge, one must approach a person who is 100% engaged in devotional service. He must not do things which are forbidden in the Shastras. A person cannot be a teacher if he drinks or smokes. In the modern system of education, a teacher's academic qualification is taken into consideration without evaluation of his moral life. Therefore, the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. The Kshatriyas or the administrative class is especially advised to give in charity and not to accept charity in any circumstances. Modern administrators raise subscriptions for some political functions, but never given charity to the citizens in any state function. It is just the reverse in the injunctions of the Shastras. The administrative class must be well versed in the Shastras, but must not take to the profession of teachers. The administrators should never pretend to become non-violent and thereby go to hell. When Arjuna wanted to become a non-violent coward in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was severely chastised by Lord Krishna. The Lord degraded Arjuna at that time to the status of an uncivilized man for his avowed acceptance of the cult of non-violence. The administrative class must be personally trained in the military education. Cowards should not be elevated to the presidential throne by dint of numerical votes only. The monarchs were all chivalrous personalities, and therefore monarchy should be maintained provided the monarch is regularly trained in the occupational duties of a king. In fighting, the king or the president should never return home without being hurt by the enemy. The so-called king of today never visits the warfield. He is very much expert in artificially encouraging the fighting strength in the hope of false national prestige. As soon as the administrative class is turned into a gang of mercantile and laborer men, the whole machinery of government becomes polluted. The Vaishyas of the mercantile communities are especially advised to protect the cows. Cow protection means increasing the milk productions, namely curd and butter. Agriculture and distribution of the foodstuff are the primary duties of the mercantile community, backed by education in Vedic knowledge and trained to give in charity. As the Kshatriyas were given charge of the protection of the citizens, Vaishyas were given the charge of the protection of animals. Animals are never meant to be killed. Killing of animals is a symptom of barbarian society. For a human being, agricultural produce, fruits and milk are sufficient and compatible foodstuffs. The human society should give more attention to animal protection. The productive energy of the laborer is misused when he is occupied by industrial enterprises. Industry of various types cannot produce the essential needs of man, namely rice, wheat, grains, milk, fruits and vegetables. The production of machines and machine tools increases the artificial living fashion of a class of vested interest and keeps thousands of men in starvation and unrest. This should not be the standard of civilization. The Shudra class is less intelligent and they have no independence. They are meant for rendering sincere service to the three higher sections of the society. The Shudra class can attain all comforts of life simply by rendering service to the higher classes. It is especially enjoined that a Shudra should never bank money. As soon as the Shudras accumulate wealthy, it will be misused for sinful activities in wine, women and gambling. Wine, women and gambling indicate that the population is degraded into less than Shudra quality. The higher caste should always look after the maintenance of the Shudras, and they should provide them with old and used garments. A Shudra should not leave his master when the master is old and invalid, and the master should keep the servant satisfied in all respects. The Shudras must first of all be satisfied by sumptuous food and clothing before any sacrifice is performed. In this age, so many functions are held by spending millions, but the poor laborer is not sumptuously fed or given charity, clothing, etc. The laborers are thus dissatisfied and so they make agitation. The Varnas are, so to speak, classifications of different occupations, and ashrama dharma is a gradual process on the path of self-realization. Both are interrelated and one is dependent on the other. The main purpose of ashrama dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. The brahmachari ashrama is a training ground for prospective candidates. In this ashrama, it is instructed that this material world is not actually the home of the living being. The conditioned souls under material bondage are prisoners of matter, and therefore self-realization is the ultimate aim of life. The whole system of ashrama dharma is a means to detachment. One who fails to assimilate the spirit of detachment is allowed to enter into family life with the same spirit of detachment. Therefore, one who attains detachment may at once adopt the fourth order, namely renounced, and thus live on charity only, not to accumulate wealth, but just to keep body and soul together for ultimate realization. Household life is for one who is attached, and Vanaprastha and Sannyas orders of life are for those who are detached from material life. The Brahmachari ashrama is especially meant for training both the attached and detached. Thus ends the Transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, starting this verse, Bhishmadeva is instructing Maharaj Yudhishthira in various religious principles. As we saw in the last verse, Sutta Goswami was speaking, and he said that how Maharaj Yudhishthira, after hearing Bhishmadeva glorify the Supreme Lord and speaking about the various qualities of the Supreme Lord and the various reasons why the Pandavas were undergoing difficulties, Maharaj Yudhishthira in a very appealing tone talks to Bhishmadeva, and he asked Bhishmadeva that what are the essential principles of various religious duties. So there are so many religious duties, and what are the essential principles? So please tell us. And in response to that, starting this verse, we will see that Bhishmadeva is giving various instructions to Maharaj Yudhishthira. So it is said that in the Shanti Parva in Mahabharata, there is a detailed description about various instructions which Bhishmadeva gave to Maharaj Yudhishthira, and here it's more summarized, and therefore we can see this verse is a huge purport. Prabhupada is trying to elaborate the ideas which are presented in this verse in a very detailed way. So this verse says that so yatha varnam yatha ashramam. So according to one's so based upon swabhava, one's acquired qualities and one's prescribed duties. So based upon the qualities and the prescribed duties, people can be classified into two categories, yatha varnam, yatha ashramam. So there is a classification of social order or the castes, and the second is the classification based on the orders of life, or in other sense the spiritual divisions of the society. And furthermore, there is another classification which is being talked about, or in another sense it is being described here, that there is something known as counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So one is vairagya, which is counteraction by detachment, and another is raga upadibhyam. So there is a certain designation based upon which there is some interaction by attachment. So, and all these things have different symptoms, and Bhishmadeva is trying to explain what are the symptoms of these different varnas and ashramas, and of those who are who fall into the category of counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. So who are these people who are driven by this interaction of attachment, and who are those people who are driven by the counteraction of detachment? And it's a huge purport. So maybe what I'll try to do is just briefly talk about the various points that Prabhupada is talking in this purport, and it's quite very important. And the first point Prabhupada says is that the conception of 4 castes and 4 orders of life, as planned with the Lord himself, is to accelerate transcendental qualities of the individual person so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identity and thus accordingly to get free from material bondage or conditional life. So this is a very important principle. So sometimes in the modern day, especially today, there is a certain idea that the caste system or the social system as described in the Vedas is discriminatory. It is meant to suppress people. It is utilized by a certain higher class of men to take advantage of people of other lower castes. But there is another real purpose behind why this system is in place. So that purpose is what Prabhupada is first establishing. The purpose is not to acquire materially some power or some benefits by one class of people over another class of people. The purpose is something very, very different. The purpose is that one can evolve oneself spiritually. And what does that evolving spiritually means? Prabhupada explains here that first of all, one should develop transcendental qualities. So unless the lakshanan, the qualities, the characteristics of an individual do not evolve to a certain kind. In this verse, as we will see in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining that one is not even called civilized if one does not possess certain basic qualities. So from the first level, one has to come from the base level of animalistic life. One has to come to the status of civilized or uncivilized human beings. From that status, one has to go to a civilized human being. From civilized human being, the practice of religious principles begin. For uncivilized person, there are no real principles. They just randomly, just like a little higher than animal, but they do not really do anything significant in terms of following the duties, taking care of certain religious principles. They do not have those conceptions well built. But in case of civilized people, they are supposed to acquire good and good qualities. And that's why people are sent to school. Why are they sent to school? When they are sent to school, they're assumed, they're expected that they have good qualities. Just like, when we meet people, sometimes people say, hey, gaon wala hai. You see? What does it mean? That means he's not trained, he's not civilized, therefore he is speaking something. He's not very intelligent, he's not trained, he does not have good qualities. But a person who goes to school, even if they behave without good qualities, then it is very unfortunate. So there is a clear distinction between civilized and uncivilized. And there is always an educational system to make people civilized. But in the modern sense, there is a certain understanding of what is civilized is, but here we will see what Bhishma Deva suggests are the qualities by which one is said to be supposedly civilized. So the whole process of Varna and Ashrama is to elevate one spiritually. That is the most fundamental principle behind this system. And what does to elevate spiritually means? The aim of life, according to the Vedic civilization, is self-realization. Is to understand that one is not this body, one is spirit, soul, and also to recognize that I am the servant of the Supreme Lord. The constitutional position of the living entity is subordinate to the Supreme Lord, and that is to serve Him. So this one idea has to become solidified in one's consciousness, in one's heart, that I am servant of the Supreme Lord. That is the point which all the Vedic literatures are trying to drive one. But that is not so simple, because the conditioned living entity is so much driven by this wrong material conception of life. To become a servant of someone, even of the Supreme Lord, does not strike the living entity. Because of so many past habits, past conditioning, past activities, one doesn't want to become a servant. The tendency to lord over is always prevalent. And because of the influence of the material energy, the illusory energy, one is forgetful about one's own constitutional position and one's own duties. And what happens because of this? Because of this, one is perpetually struggling in the material world. So our existence in the material world comes because of our misidentification. When the identification that we are not servant of the Lord comes into us, immediately we are enamored, we are captivated by the material energy. And as soon as we are captivated by material energy, what happens? We suffer threefold miseries. Suffering because of body and mind, suffering because of other living entities, suffering because of natural calamities. So immediately the living entity is trapped in material energy and the consequences of material energy. The problems of birth, death, old age and disease immediately captivates. So for all this, the foremost thing is to come out of the misidentification. But if you were to do this suddenly, if you are told to people, okay, now your goal of life is to shift completely to just do this one thing, that you have to realize that you are a servant of the God and stop all of your activities. If someone were to say that, what would happen to the world? They would say, how is it possible? What will happen to my studies? What will happen to my job? What will happen to my family? What will happen to so many other responsibilities that I have? So immediately people will oppose. People will say, no. This is not the goal of life. You are misunderstanding. And even if this is the goal of life, we cannot do it right now. It is not possible. Because material bondage is so strong that it doesn't allow one to think about the spiritual things. The value of spiritual things is lost because of strong material attachment. So, in order to train people in a systematic way while they are performing their occupational duties, we need a system. And that beautiful system is Varnashrama system. And more specifically, Daivi Varnashrama system. Daivi Varnashrama system means not only that there is a classification into the four castes and four spiritual orders of life, but that is all based with the Supreme Lord as centered. So this Varnashrama system is why it is so important, because for the large mass of people it is difficult to renounce things and take to the spiritual life completely. And therefore they need a systematic approach to engage them in this process of how to realize their true self as a spirit soul and as a servant of the Supreme Lord. And therefore this system is actually very nice. If it is understood, one can appreciate how wonderful is the Vedic way of life. And as we can see, that this is described by the Supreme Lord himself. This idea of the four categories and four divisions of human society and four divisions of spiritual orders are given by the Lord himself. And therefore anything which is given by the Lord himself is not faulty. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Chaturvanyam Maya system, Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. So, Maya system, it is created by me. This Chaturvanyam, these four divisions of human society are created by me. And on what basis is it created? Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. Guna Karma. Guna means the qualities. What are these qualities? The qualities are based upon the three modes of material nature. So when one has predominantly mode of goodness, one is said to be Brahmana. When the predominant quality is mode of passion, one is said to be Kshatriya. And if the predominant quality is a mixture of passion and ignorance, then one is said to be Vaishya. And if the predominant quality is of ignorance, one is called Shudra. So it is not by birth that these classifications are made. Because in any society, to function effectively, it must utilize the best skills of that individuals. Just like, for example, there's a family. Someone may do a certain task very well, and someone else may do a certain task very well. And if you interchange their roles, then the family is no more efficiently functioning. So similarly, in a world where different people have different abilities, different skills, if they are engaged in the rightful way, then the effectiveness or collective well-being or the collective functioning of the society is very, very productive. Just like someone can do a lot of hard work and do work in the farm, but someone else may not be able to work so hard, but may be able to think very strongly, very deeply. So if we exchange these two people to function in two different areas, the person who can think but not very strong, we put him in the farm, and the person who can work hard but cannot think deeply, we put him in the place to teach something, there's a problem. So the society has to be organized. There has to be a certain organization in the society. If that is not done, it leads to ineffective society and a lot of chaos. And actually, following Vedic life means to follow this Varna and Ashrama system. And this Varna and Ashrama system have specific duties, specific responsibilities, and some do's and don'ts. And what happens in this process? In this process, one evolves spiritually. But if there is no system like this, then the evolution of spiritual life doesn't happen systematically, and the mass people in general are in delusion. Now, if this is the goal, if it is based upon the guna and karma, guna means the three modes of material nature and karma means the activities. Based upon the activities that one is performing, if that is the criteria to define which caste or which human social division does he fall into, but why is there a problem? So, Srila Prabhupada gives a wonderful example. He says, just like sometimes as one gets old, one may develop cataract, a thin layer of covering which prevents one to see things very clearly. Just because there is a cataract, one is not supposed to remove the eye, but one is supposed to remove that layer of the cataract and make one's vision clear again. So similarly, the caste system, unfortunately, because of less qualified brahmanas, when they try to artificially impose their supremacy, it leads to a misguided and misapplied caste system. And therefore people think that the solution to this problem now is to remove the caste system completely. But that is not the solution. The solution is to remove the impurities in the caste system or impurities in the social divisions. The social divisions will always exist. One cannot take away from that. Even in a conversation that Srila Prabhupada, when he went to Russia, he happens to meet only one professor there, Professor Kotowski. And in the conversation with him, this topic of caste system comes up, and Prabhupada says, no, even in Russia, so-called casteless system, there are people who are intelligent, there are people who are administrators, there are people who do business, and there are people who provide labor. That means there is no place. You may artificially try to remove and make it as a classless society, but it is not possible to make a classless society. There will be someone who is good at one thing over another person who is good at something else. And if carefully analyzed, all the people can be fallen in these four categories of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Therefore, it is important to note that this is not artificial imposition by some human-made, some intelligent humans have made the system, and therefore they are trying to impose upon someone else. No. Whether we accept, whether we don't accept, the system is going to remain because it is created by the Lord. In any society, if one goes, there will be some people who are intelligent. There will be some people who like to do business. There will be some people who cannot think so much, who are happy to give some service. So this is very important that this system is created by the Lord Himself, and it is also said that the Lord does not belong to any of these systems because He is not one of the conditioned souls. So, basically, the point is this is for the conditioned living entities to evolve to higher states. In the pure state, one does not belong to any of these statuses. But in the conditioned state, because one is associating oneself with the modes of material nature, one will fall into one of these categories. So, and it is also very important to note that what is the Prabhupada then describes here that this subject matter is discussed in all the Puranas. And similarly, that is also being discussed in Mahabharata more elaborately by Bhishma Deva. So the point here is that it is not something which is new or which is only described in some places. Throughout the Vedic literatures, the idea of Varnashrama Dharma is described so as to emphasize that this system is required for spiritual elevation, and this is created by the Lord Himself. Now we'll briefly talk about, there are 9 qualities which Bhishma Deva says that one human being must have to become civilized. So after that there are descriptions about what are those qualities that one must have, one who is a Brahmana, who is a Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. But even before you come to that state of having those qualities, one must have some base qualities. And the base qualities are, first is not to become angry. See, as soon as one becomes angry, one's body and mind gets polluted. And one's intelligence is lost. We quite often become angry. And when we become angry, sometimes in that anger, in that moment, we do something which is not right. So, base level, one of the 3 gateways to hell is anger. Especially when we don't acquire something which we have strong desire, we immediately become angry. So, one has to learn how to check anger, krodha. That is a quality of a civilized person. In fact, in different places it is said that how anger is like holding a charcoal or a burnt coal in your hand. You are thinking you are going to burn someone else, but in this process you are holding that anger within you. You are thinking that anger you will suppress someone else, but that is also kind of killing you. And it is said that one of the presidents of America, when he used to get angry about others, he used to write letters and not send it to them, but he used to keep with him. So he wouldn't express himself just because he's angry. He would not speak immediately at that moment. Sometimes we become agitated and immediately we want to say something to someone else. But this president, they found the letters later on, and it seems that there was no address and he didn't send it to anyone and there was no signature. He just wrote it and kept it. So he had some ill feelings or he had some disagreements. He was angry with someone, but he didn't express immediately. Because he knows when we are in the lower modes, what we do, we have no idea. What we say, we don't have idea. We'll say something without thinking. So one should not be reactionary. To be instinctive, to be reactionary is lower quality. To not think, to say something suddenly. Okay, I think like this, I'll speak. I feel angry, so I will just blast. I will just do whatever I like. No. This pollutes one's body and mind. To not lie is another very basic principle. To be truthful is very important. Without being truthful, there can be no trust. There can be no sane transactions between people if they are not truthful. And the only leg in Kali Yuga that is still present, a little bit, is truthfulness. Of all the 4 religious principles, a little bit that is there in Kali Yuga is truthfulness, and that will also gradually reduce. And the human society will be very chaotic. There will be no trustworthiness amongst people. It will be transactional, and then they will lie quite often, and so on and so forth. There are many other qualities here. I'll just, to forgive is another very important quality. Especially as devotees, one should overlook the minor offenses or minor mistakes of others. We should not take it too seriously, because after all, we are all in the path of making spiritual advancement. That means we will have some deficiencies. That means there has to be a certain amount of correction. If one is an authority, one can correct, but at the same time, one should not take anything personally. Even amongst other devotees, one should not take it personally, but rather one must be willing to forgive. Not to forgive and to carry resentment is not good. It is very important. We should learn the art of forgiveness, and we have to see from the Bhagavatam how Parikshit Maharaj had no animosity towards Shringi for cursing. You see, one can become very animous, one can become enemy, one can become angry, one can become resentful just because someone troubles us. Sometimes we develop all these qualities, become jealousy, and we try to fight against them rather than forgive them. Forgiving is a very nice quality which everyone should develop, and especially as a Vaishnava, is very important. And I'm just going to talk about one or two other qualities here. To be simple, saralata is very important. Another name of a Vaishnava means simplicity. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj says, Vaishnava means simplicity, and simplicity means Vaishnava. This is a very important characteristic of a devotee. And here Bhishma Deva is telling this is also a simple quality, this is a quality of a civilized human being. So without being simple, one is not to be called as a Vaishnava. Duplicitous. To say something, to mean something, this is all very dangerous. Especially as devotees, this quality is even more important, because the world outside trusts us as representatives of Srila Prabhupada. Our behavior will be noted by people as how are we? Are we crooked like people outside in general? Are we too exploitative, too smart, to cheat others in specific ways? Or are we simple, genuine people? So the simplicity is a very important quality which one must possess. So it is said there are a few more qualities which I'm not touching upon because of limited time. But all these things are said to be preliminary qualities by which one can be called as a civilized person. And Prabhupada is talking about various important other qualities of the Varnas and Ashrama. And for one who is in the intelligent men, or the Brahmanas are said to be like the head of the society, they are said to be the intelligence of the society. And one of the qualities that they must possess is that controlling the senses is the most essential quality of this intelligent class of men. Because without controlling senses, one cannot trust anyone. And intelligent class of men, if they do not control their senses, they will be whimsical in their actions. There will be no steadiness in action. And Prabhupada says that is the basis of morality. If one cannot control senses, one cannot be morally right. And Prabhupada is saying about an intelligent man must have great control even in terms of sex indulgence with one's own legitimate wife. And further on, Prabhupada goes on to say that even if one is so-called intelligent even in a worldly way, he is said to abuse his intelligence if he doesn't follow the Vedic way of life. So today we see there are a lot of so-called materially intelligent scientists, there are some intelligent businessmen, there are some intelligent technologists, and so on and so forth. But if they do not follow a Vedic way of life, they are actually abusing their intelligence. They are misusing their intelligence. And Prabhupada explains what does it mean to lead a Vedic way of life is to study especially the literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So unless one does not read these texts, one cannot come to Vedic way of life. And to learn this Vedic way of life, one has to go to a person who is 100% devotee of the Lord. Through him one should learn. And Prabhupada is saying that in today's age, even though there is so-called intelligence, but people are not checking their morality, the status of their moral life. And Prabhupada gives the example, if a teacher is drinking and smoking, what is the value of him saying not to smoke or not to drink? And Prabhupada is saying, because there is no evaluation of the moral life of the intelligent class of people, there is the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. So, only teachers' academic qualification is taken, but not the moral life. And therefore there is havoc. The students also will try to imitate the immoral ways in which the professors and the so-called intelligent people follow. And this is complete misuse of their education, misuse of their intelligence. So we have to actually really understand this. It is very important to note that this Vedic knowledge is not just meant for people in the temples. It is actually meant for the entire world. It talks about all different fields of knowledge. How to govern a society, how to rule a society, what kind of laws should be made, how should different people function, what should be the goal of each of the society, sections of the societies, and so on and so forth. And Kshatriya has many different qualities. We can also read from Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada is highlighting one important quality here. The administrator should never pretend to become non-violent and thereby go to hell. Sometimes people think, especially today, if a politician or a state administrator is strict and he's doing some violence, people think, oh no, this is all bad. You have to be only non-violent. No. There is a right place for violence also. One has to learn from the Shastras of what is that rightful way. When it is coming from the right source, right authorities, right Shastras, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, as where violence is to be applied, violence has to be applied. Otherwise, the disturbing element of the society will trouble the people in general. People think by being non-violent to people who are harmful, the society will become nice. No. One has to deal with the people who are violent, who are disturbing elements in the society with violence. And that is a part of the Kshatriyas and the administrators. They cannot be cowards. And Prabhupada is giving the example of a president who does not ever go to warfield and who is just talking about fighting in the name of nationalism, but never going to the field. This kind of people are not considered to be administrators. One is supposed to lead by the front and actually be participant, very brave, very chivalrous. Today's administrators, Kshatriyas, do not possess these qualities, and therefore there is so much of topsy-turvy. The so-called administrators, so-called government leaders, they are businessmen. They try to do something else. They try to make money out of the thing where they are supposed to provide peace and law and order to the society in general. So there are various important responsibilities of each of these classes. The intelligent class, the administrator class, the business class. And the business class have very important duty. They have the duty of cow protection. They have to increase the milk productions, namely curd and butter. So according to the Vedic way of life, if one has, Prabhupada says this often, that if one has a little land and a cow, one's economic problems are solved. Today, artificial wealth is being talked about. There's artificial exchange. For a paper note, there is exchange of real resources. And any country can print, in a bank or wherever they print the money, and they can just act as if they're giving real money and taking some valuable resources. But actually, according to the Vedic system, there must be some value to the other things, like gold coin or a silver coin. It has value, and you exchange some resource, it has meaning. And today, even those so-called paper notes are no more existing. There is something like cryptocurrency, which I don't understand. But people are creating false wealth, which have no real basis. And therefore, there is an economic chaos everywhere. So even the Vedic scriptures, Bhagavatam, addresses these questions of what should be the economic goal of human society. And what kind of wealth must be generated? Wealth is not just artificial money. Although in today's society, because the society is functioning like that, there is a need of that also. But the real wealth is to have this milk products, food stuff, because by no other means this food stuff can be produced. And Prabhupada talks about killing of animals as a symptom of barbarian society. Animals are meant to be protected by the king and by the Vaishyas. Killing of animal, because praja means anyone who is born in that land, is to be taken care by the king, not just human beings. And today, animals are slaughtered without any consideration. Just like today or a few days ago, there was a post someone shared saying that there were some people who are opposing that some animals are being sacrificed in a religious function. And there was a lot of chaos, a lot of protests that, why animals are sacrificed. Yes, in Kali Yuga, sacrifice of animals is not recommended, but every day millions of animals are slaughtered. But no one protests those things. So one must recognize, these Vedic scriptures are not just talking about how one should live a life in a temple. Not just that much. They are talking how the entire society should function. So there is so much to learn from the Vedic society, that animal protection is so important, and Prabhupada is also talking about just making money by some artificial machines and machine tools will lead to artificial way of living life. And it will also lead people to make some money by a certain small class of people. They will make money, and rest all will remain in starvation and unrest. And therefore people call big tech, big pharma, and so on and so forth. There is just a few group of people who become billionaires, trillionaires. And mass of people, they do not have any wealth. So this kind of society is not encouraged. And it's very unfortunate. Prabhupada says this should not be the standard of civilization. What he is meaning is that the artificial way of living life, and some people making money and others not making money. So today there is, in the name of robotics, in the name of artificial intelligence, people want to promote anything without any ethical, moral considerations, without understanding the implications on the society, what is going to happen. If people don't have work to do, if they don't have money, if they don't have a job, what will happen? There will be social unrest. People will do all sorts of illegal things. And it's so dangerous. And people are not having any sense of conscience to look at these things. And then Prabhupada talks about Shudra class of men as how they should not have no independence, and because they are less intelligent, and they're meant to provide service to the other three classes of men, which is the intelligent class of men, the administrators, and the mercantile men. And it is said that Prabhupada gives a lot of other principles as how the Shudras must be treated. They must be provided sumptuous food, clothing must be given to them by the other social divisions of human beings. And Prabhupada is talking about how people have so many functions, spending millions and millions. Today people have parties, office party, this party, they spend millions of rupees, but they will not give any little money to the person who is a laborer. And Prabhupada is saying, but the poor laborer is not sumptuously fed or given charity, clothing, etc. But any important event happens, Prabhupada is saying here that the Shudras or the working men who is providing with services must be given some charity, food and clothing, etc. And otherwise they will be dissatisfied, and as soon as they are dissatisfied, there will be unrest again, agitation again. So, and also there are more injunctions as how having too much money or money in the banks of people who are not very intelligent will lead them to use in illegal or activities of having wine, women, and so on and so forth, gambling, and which is so detrimental. And therefore sometimes we should not be too artificially sympathetic towards people who do not know how to use money, and just give them money. And they will just, because of the less intelligence, they will misuse the money again and again, and they will fall into trouble, and we think we are helping them, but it's not real help. So that is about the different varnas, the different occupations that people are following. But then there is ashrama dharma, and Prabhupada is again talking about the goal of the varnas is the same, to come to the spiritual identity, to come out of this conditional life. The goal of ashrama dharma is gradual progress in the path of self-realization. So both have similar goal. So in all cases, the goal is for spiritual advancement. And Prabhupada is more specifically talking about ashrama dharma leads to two different things. One is knowledge and detachment. Very important. So without knowledge, without knowing that we are not part of this material world, we cannot come out of this material illusion. We must be trained to understand that this world is not where I am supposed to be. Just like if we undergo some suffering again and again, we say, oh, I am having some disease. This is not the rightful way. I want to come out of it. Similarly, if you are living in a place which is so bad, filled with miseries and troubles, then we have to immediately say, oh, I don't want to be here. I want to come. This doesn't look like a real place. I want to go back to my home. Similarly, someone who is very intelligent, one who is trained in ashrama dharma, he will come to know that no, this is not my real life. This material life is not real life. This material world is not my real home. And then detachment will come. Then one will learn that no, I should not be attached to these temporary things. The so-called money, name, fame, honor, dishonor, so-called community, so-called family, this is all temporary. I'm not supposed to be attached to any of these things. For that training, ashrama dharma is required. And therefore the four ashramas, the brahmachari ashrama, the grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa, they have certain roles and responsibilities. They have certain duties to be performed. And they are trained in a specific way. And one of the important things that Prabhupada says is that a spirit of detachment is trained in brahmachari ashram, not to be attached to material things. This is very important to train people when they're young. Children must be trained in the spirit of detachment, not in accumulating more and more things in material world. That should not be the duty of the parents. And that spirit of detachment, when it is developed, even if they want to enter into a family life, they can carry that spirit of detachment. Otherwise, the spirit of attachment overruns, makes people mad. And Prabhupada is saying that there is also an important role of the grihastha ashrama. They are the ones who make money, and therefore they have the duty to give charity, to maintain the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas and sannyasis who do not make money. Therefore there is a role of utilizing one's wealth in maintaining the other ashramas. And it is not just meant for one's own living, because that in the brahmachari life one learns that the idea of detachment, the spirit of detachment. And therefore, even when they go to grihastha ashrama, they have that detachment. Okay, this wealth that I'm earning, this much is for the Lord, this much is for the Vaishnavas, this much I must do in charity at the right place. It is not for my own accumulation, endlessly. So, household life is for one who is attached, and the vanaprastha and sannyasa orders of life are those who are detached from material life. And the brahmachari ashram is especially meant for training both the attached and the detached. So if someone is even attached, how to be attached, and to what degree? In brahmachari ashram, one will be trained so that even if they enter into grihastha life, they still make spiritual advancement. Otherwise, the ashrama means a place where they make spiritual progress, where the Lord is in the center. If there is no ashrama, then it becomes purely materialistic way of functioning. So these are some points from the Srila Prabhupada's purport, and it's a very nice purport. A lot more can be discussed on this, but it is very important to see how Bhagavatam presents the principles of how to maintain a society, how to create an order in society, how the entire society can be elevated spiritually. These principles are not just meant for a certain class of people who are just renounced in their life. No, it is for the entire society, and therefore one should take advantage and make ourselves more acquainted with this wonderful Vedic system of knowledge of how to govern, how to lead a society, how to create a meaningful collective society for the spiritual upliftment. And Srila Prabhupada also wanted towards his end of his physical presence in this world, he was talking about how the large amount of his work is still pending in terms of creating Varnashrama societies, and he wanted devotees to lead an example where devotees demonstrate to the people in general how to lead a life of Varnashrama. And then wonderful conversations, and the devotees ask, oh, should we become like Shudras? Should we become like Vaishyas? Should we become like this? No, Prabhupada says we do not become that. We do not associate with that. But based upon our proclivities, one may be engaged like that. A devotee is transcendental. He is above these modes of material nature. He is above these four varnas, and therefore he is not anything connected. But for the showing of the people, someone will act like a farmer, someone will act like a Kshatriya, someone will act like a Sudra, the Brahmana, and so on and so forth. But to demonstrate for people in general how to lead a life. Otherwise, if they do not have an example anywhere to see that the Varnashrama system is possible, then people in general will not be able to follow anything well, and that means the large section of the population who cannot live in the temple will not be able to practice spiritual life as it is required. So we'll stop here and see if there are any quick one question or comment.